Hello, welcome. I'm Izzy at Minerva. Today we are looking at how to fit our very own Gemma Dress sewing pattern. This is one of our Minerva exclusive sewing patterns, and I'm here today to talk you through how to do some common fit changes, how to measure your body accurately, how to pick a size, how to lengthen or shorten the pattern piece should you need to, and then we're also going to look at how to make a couple of common fit alterations. Now, because the garment has this beautiful high neckline, we're going to look at how to alter that neckline if it's not quite sitting in the right place for you. And we're also going to look at the shoulder seams and look at adjusting those should you need to as well. That's a really common adjustment. Now, as this garment has a beautiful high neck detail, we are going to be looking at fit alterations specifically relating to the neckline and the shoulders, because those two areas are the areas where there's going to be a lot of focus in terms of the fit, and it'd be lovely to get that perfectly spot on. Now, as always with our Minerva exclusive sewing patterns, we also provide not only the gorgeous little instruction booklet, but we also provide a sew along, which is available to watch on our YouTube channel for free. So if you're not sure about a couple of steps or how to actually put the garment together, you need a little bit more support, please do refer to our Gemma Dress sew along, which is on our YouTube channel. In addition, we've also got a fabulous video that talks about all the different types of gorgeous fabrics you could sew this dress up with, and that would look absolutely amazing in this pattern. So do take a look at that as well, because you can find all those fabrics on our Minerva website as well. And of course, in addition to that, once you've sewn up your first version of the Gemma dress, you can then hack the pattern. So I've produced a whole series of videos looking at how to hack the pattern to create loads of different looks, so you can get a lot of wear and a lot of different looks out of this one pattern. Okay, great, let's get straight on into it and check out the pattern booklet. So here's our gorgeous booklet. It's got lots of really helpful information. We're going to be looking specifically at the fitting guide and the size charts. So the actual design of the garment is that it's a sort of skater style design that is a really timeless, elegant sort of look. It's designed with a close fit around the bust and the waist, and then it sort of flares out gently around the hips. So it's a nice swishy knee-length skirt. So the features of the Gemma dress fit are that it's got a high neckline with a gorgeous neckband. It's got gathered sleeves and a pull-on little cuff down at the bottom. It's got a very fitted waistband with a bit of empire shaping, and it's also very fitted around the bust. So it's going to have a really nice close fit around the top half of our body. But it's got this lovely full A-line skirt down at the bottom, which really is going to look gorgeous. I love how we've got these gorgeous little gathers underneath the bust, and that design feature is then repeated on the cuffs and also the top of the arm, the sleeve there. So we can expect just a 2 centimetre amount of ease around the bust and the waist. So what this means is it is fitted, so you're going to need to make sure that you're really getting your fit size correct around the waist and the bust. And what ease means is it's the amount of extra fabric you've got between your body and the actual size of the garment at that point. So it'll be 2.5 centimetres bigger than your waist circumference. Okay, so as usual with our Minerva patterns, we have 2 size ranges. We have the Mrs. size range and then the women's size range. And the way that we've designed this is they're both designed for the same height model, but that the bust measurements are slightly different. So our Mrs. range has a B cup pattern size, and our women's cup size has a D pattern cup size. Don't get confused with bra cup sizes and pattern cup sizes, they are different. If you have a look over here, there's some more description about what that means. A pattern cup size relates to the difference between your full bust and your high bust body measurement. If the difference is around 5 centimetres, you need to cut the B pattern size. If it is more like 10 centimetres, you need to be cutting the D size. All that means is basically that the pattern has been designed here in the women's size for a fuller bust, and this one for a less full bust, and that's all it means. Okay, and now that we understand what the garment is supposed to look like and what we're aiming for aesthetically, let's take a look at how to measure our body accurately. The first measurement is our high bust measurement. That's measured underneath our armpit all the way round, and then you want to take a big breath in and out again, and just make sure you can fit 2 fingers between yourself and the tape measure. The next measurement is our full bust measurement, which goes around the widest part of our bust. Again, make sure it's nice and straight at the back. As you do this measurement, do it in front of a mirror if you need to make sure that you're getting that nice and straight. Big breath in, hand out, fit 2 fingers between yourself and the tape measure, and that's your measurement. The waist is located between the bottom of the ribs and the top of the hips. So the easiest way to find that is just to bend to one side, find where the natural break is, right there and there, and then wrap your tape measure around your waist at that point. Big breath in, and out, and just fit 2 fingers between yourself and the tape measure. The final measurement is our hip measurement. It's usually 20 centimetres below the waist or there and thereabouts, and also it's often at the bottom of where our zip is located on our trousers. So grab your tape measure, and basically it's the widest point between your waist and the floor. So grab your tape measure, wrap it around your body, wiggle the tape measure up and down to make sure that you've definitely got your widest section, and then take that measurement there. Now, based on our body measurements, which we've just taken, now let's take a look at the size chart and determine which size we should cut out based on our body dimensions. I've got an example here of a set of body sizes so that we can work through the process of understanding which size to cut. In this example, my high bust is 95. So working along the body measurement chart, because these are my body measurements, I'm looking for a box that is closest to 95. And for me, that's actually H. Now, if you have a look on this size as well, I've got a 94 here, which is pretty close to 95. So high bust wise, we could fit it either into the misses or the women's size. For our full bust, I'm at 100 centimetres. And this box here is 99.7. If I come to this box here for the same bust size, I'm looking at 104, so I know that's not going to work for me. Okay, so we're not going to do that size, we're actually going to cut this size because the difference between a high bust and bust is 5 centimetres, and that is a pattern cup size B. Okay, next, my waist in this example is 83 centimetres. So rather than fitting to the H, I'm now fitting it into the I pattern size, and my hips are 115, which fits me into the J really nicely. So we're going to have to grade between not 1, not 2, but 3 pattern sizes. Now, as you look at the size chart, you'll see these are our body measurements, but we also have this section here for finished garment measurements, and that tells you the circumference of the fabric at the bust, waist and hip, and it also tells you the length of the entire garment measured from the nape of the neck to the bottom of the back hem, and also the cuff opening for around this area here. So we've got a couple of other things we can check. If we cut out the H, we've got a nice amount of ease because it's 102 centimetres up at the top around our bust, and our bust is 100 centimetres, so we've got a nice 2.2 centimetre ease. We're definitely going to fit into it, but it's going to be close, which is nice. It's really nice and fitted. Waist is 83, and we're definitely not going to fit into the H because it's 81.9, but we will definitely fit into the I at 85.7. So again, we've got just over 2 centimetres ease. And our hip, well, obviously it's an A-line skirt, so our hip has a lot of ease and we're easily going to fit into there. Now, when you cut out your sleeve pattern piece, you will be cutting out your bust size, which will be this one here for us. You might just want to wrap a tape measure around your wrist and just check that your cuff is going to fit you comfortably. So just do that and double check. Now, we do have a lot of ease around the cuff, so it should be like a reasonable fit around there. You should be able to slide it on and off over your wrist, just like that. Okay, here is our body measurement that I'm going to work with for this demo. We've got a high bust and bust of size H, waist of I and hips of size J. So we're grading through the pattern at 3 different places. Now obviously for you guys at home, your body measurements will be different to the ones I'm showing you today, but the principles of what I'm showing you and where to grade at which points across the pattern will be relevant no matter what size you're cutting out. Starting off with pattern piece A right here, we're going to be cutting the neck band, the size of our bust. So for us, that's a size H in this example. So I'm just going to draw a line at the H point there, and then continue all the way around and at the same point here. So that's your bust size. So this is pattern piece B. Now here you can see there's a notch right here that says approximate bust level is at the notch. So my bust level, I want to be cutting a size H. Now a size H is 3 lines in, and I can see that from the little chart right here. So at this point, I want to be cutting a size H. Now, if we actually look at the garment, the piece that we're looking at right now is this piece here. So if I flip it over, this is half of the front of the piece right here. And you can see this side seam here ties in to a waistband. So by the time I hit the bottom of this side seam, I really want it to be my waist size. Now my waist is probably a little bit lower down than this point here, but it'd be nice to be able to grade it in at that point, and just to keep things simple. So by the time I hit the bottom of the pattern piece at the side seam, I want to be cutting my next size, which is an I, and that's the next size. So grab a ruler and just basically draw a straight line between the two. Now, this is such a short side seam that you may as well just join up the bottom with whatever size your waist is and just grade it straight up. That's going to give you a good enough grade between the waist and the bust area. So a nice straight line in a diagonal like that. From here up, you're going to be cutting the bust size. And from here, this bottom piece, we will be cutting the waist size. So we can tie it in beautifully with the waistband. Next, pattern piece C is our back bodice. We've got a little notch here that represents the bust location. And down here, this is the location where we'd want it to be the waist. Mark your bust size at the notch and your waist size down at the bottom down there, and just draw a line between the two, just like that. From here up is going to be the bust size, and from along here will be the waist. Grab your ruler and make sure it's perpendicular to these lines here and parallel with this notch here, and mark your bust pattern size that you want to cut out at that point. Then you basically just want to draw a little line between the two. It's a very, very gentle grade at that point, and then straight on up using your bust size all the way up to the neckline. From your neckline across, you're cutting your bust size. For our back waistband, we're going to be cutting our waist size because it's obviously all on the waist. So for us, that's a size I. And then for our sleeve, because it's going to fit in at the arm side where our bust size is, just cut your bust size for the sleeve. Let's now move on to the skirt pattern pieces on the next sheet. Now, if you look across pattern piece H and I, they're both very similar. One's at the front and one's at the back. But at the side seam down here, this one says that this notch here is approximate waist, and that ties up with that notch. And this one here is the approximate hip. So this is the corresponding notch on the back pattern piece. So the top up here, right above the waist notch, is going to be our waist size, which for me is a size I in this example. So you'd be cutting out the size I at this point here. And then the hip point, I would be a size J, which is the largest size in this example. Draw a line between the two. And then from the hip down, just continue with your hip size. And the hem again will be your hip size. Now the centre back down here, you've actually got two options. You can either just follow a straight line for your largest size, or you can grade slightly down the centre back as we did for the back bodice pattern piece. I'll show you how to do that. So up at the top up here, this is where the waist is. So I'm going to cut my waist size, which is I. Now, by the time we hit the zipper, we want to be at our hip size. So for me, that's the largest size. So we're just going to taper it in slightly at this point, just between those 2 points, just like that. And then you can follow the rest in a straight line. Next, let's look at the skirt front. So up at the waist, we're going to be cutting the I and straight across. By the time we hit the hips, we're at hip size. The hem will all be the hip size. Now at this point, the pattern is cut on the fold, and we need to treat this slightly differently to how we treated the centre back, because we can't really grade between sizes because it's on the fold. So at this point, I would recommend that we just cut out our hip size, and then you can just pin in the side seams if you need to. If it's too big once you've made it, it's always better to cut too big than too small. So in this particular example, my biggest size is J, which is my hip size. So I would literally just cut a straight line for my largest pattern size between the hip and the waist. This is our sleeve cuff, which is pattern piece G, and we're just going to cut the bust size for this one because that ties in with the sleeve and what size we've cut out for the sleeve. And then here, this is the waistband for the front. So we're just literally going to cut out the waist size for this pattern piece. There's no grading required. Let's look at how to lengthen or shorten our pattern pieces now. The reason we'd need to do this is if we're significantly taller or shorter than what the pattern has been designed for. So the pattern has been designed for a person who's 5'6", a woman who's 5'6", or 167 centimeters. If you are significantly taller or shorter than that, you will need to lengthen or shorten the overall pattern pieces so that the aesthetic is correct and it fits you correctly, sort of height-wise rather than width-wise. So we grade the pattern pieces to get the width-wise correct in terms of our size, and we lengthen or shorten to get the height correct. So exactly where you need to take that length out of or add it into will depend on how the garment sits on you and your exact body measurements. If you find that the waist is not fitting you correctly, it's either too high or too low, then you're going to need to look at the back bodice and front bodice pattern pieces, and you're going to be wanting to make a change between the bust and the waist. If, however, you've noticed that the waist is sitting really nicely, but the area that you need to change is between the waist and the hip, then you're going to be looking at the skirt pattern pieces. We're not going to be lengthening or shortening the waistband simply because that is one little unit all the way around the waist, and we need to lengthen or shorten it above or below the waist. So these are the two pattern pieces you're going to be looking at for lengthening or shortening, as well as potentially your sleeve. If you've got a longer sleeve, the principles I'm going to show you apply to that as well. So let's take the back bodice to start off with. In this example, I'm going to assume that we are shortening the pattern piece by 2 centimeters. Find the midpoint between the bust and the bottom of the pattern piece, and then draw a line straight across that runs perpendicular to the center back. Next, draw a line that is 2 centimeters above that. Just cut along one of those lines. Once you've done that, working along the centre back and making sure the centre back is aligned, just move that pattern piece up, and that basically eradicates the 2 centimetre difference between the 2 centimetres that you just drew out. Now, we've still got 2 things that we need to do to this in order to tidy up the pattern. The first thing is we've got a bit of a weird side seam scenario going on here, so we just need to do that phrase, which is truing up that seam. I'm just going to grab another little piece of paper and pop it under, and then just draw a line from the top point here down to the bottom of the pattern piece just to true up that little seam and cut along that line. Now the other thing we need to tidy up is the dart. So the dart here has again got like a little funny junction at that point. This is so easy to tidy up, guys. All we want to do is find the bottom of the dart, marry it up with the top of the dart, and just draw in your new dart legs, just like that. And now that we've done the back pattern piece C, whatever you've done to the back, you need to repeat for the front pattern piece as well. And the cut line needs to be at exactly the same point along the side seam, and you need to take out the same amount, so 2 centimeters. Now, one common fit alteration I'd love to show you for the Gemma dress is how to alter the neckline. Often what I see when I'm fitting people is that the neckline is too high and it needs to be lowered down at the front a little bit, or potentially at the back, but it's often the front area that needs to be lowered down. So let's take a look at how we would do that if we needed to. So we're going to be looking at the neckband A and the front bodice B because we're looking at the neckline here. So let's say in this example that you've made the Gemma dress toile and you're finding like it's just kind of digging into a little bit too much. Let's say you want to drop it by 2 centimeters at this point so that it's sitting just a bit lower and a bit more comfortably for you. So at the center front, we want to drop it by 2 centimeters. However, by the time it hits your shoulder seam, it's all good and we're all fine. So very simply along the center front, we're just going to drop it 2 centimeters. So mark a point 2 centimeters along the center front line. And then very simply, just find a soft curve that matches the basic shape of the original one here and just draw that in. Make sure that when you hit the centre front, you've got a line that's running perpendicular to the centre front so that you don't get a funny V shape when you cut out the pattern. Okay, cut out the excess that you have there. Next, dash out your seam allowance at 1.5 centimetres. And also along the shoulder line, mark the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance at that point where it stops, where that junction is. Take your tape measure, and because the tape measure is curvy, we can measure the curve of this stitch line using our tape measure. Write down the length of that line. For me, it's 12.5 centimetres. Now, as we look at our neckband pattern piece, this is our centre front here, and this bottom edge attaches to this section here. What I want us to do is, first of all, to mark the seam allowance along the bottom edge. When you get to the notch, that's when we're going to stop our seam allowance line. Measure the length of this line. For me, it was just 10.8 centimetres. Take your new neckline, the length of your new neckline, and minus the amount that we've currently got on the neckband. That is the distance that we need to extend this by in order for it to be long enough to fit into this section here. Grab a piece of tracing paper or a piece of normal paper, and to start off with, I literally just want to trace around my pattern piece. Then just find the midpoint between the notch and the centre front and just mark that there, and try and find a little right angle so that you can just do a nice perpendicular line straight up. Cut along that line. Okay, so we've now got two pieces. At the bottom here, we want to draw a line by the amount that we needed to extend it by. For me, it was 1.7 centimetres. So it's down to that point there. Then you can match up the bottom, the other pattern piece, with that point, and then I want you just to continue to follow that curve and pop that piece of paper onto the curve, and there we have it. So the length of this piece now, as we've got it right there, will then fit and accommodate our slightly longer and lower neckline. Amazing, isn't that great? Okay, let's move on to the next pattern alteration. Okay, the next pattern alteration is where we might want to move our seam forward or backward so that it's sitting correctly and in the correct place on our shoulder. So in terms of where it needs to sit, the actual shoulder seam needs to sit right along the top of your shoulder, and if it's not sitting there, once you've done your toile, mark on your toile the location of where you want your shoulder seam to be. Now it might be that it's sitting like just perfectly at the bottom of your neck, but by the time it hits your shoulder, it's kind of coming too far forward or it's too far back, or it may be that the whole thing just needs to move forward or the whole thing needs to move back. So this is such a common little alteration, but it really helps the garment sit nicely. And on a dress like this that's made out of woven fabric, so there's no kind of stretch or give, it's really lovely to get that location just perfect. So let's take a look at how to do that now. For this demo, you're going to need pattern piece B, which is your front bodice, and your back bodice, pattern piece C. Okay, in this example here, we're going to assume that the shoulder line is sitting really nicely at the neck point, but at the arm side here, it just needs to be located 2 centimetres back. Mark a point that is 2 centimetres offset at the shoulder point there, and then just simply join that point up to your neck point. Cut along that line. Okay, now this line here would be sewn onto this point here, wouldn't it? So pick it up, flip it round so that the shoulder seam matches up with the shoulder seam of the top. And that means that the shoulder seam has moved back, so we've got more fabric on the front, it's moved towards the back, but the amount of fabric that we've got for our overall arm side hasn't changed, because what we took off from here, we added onto here, and that's just going to help that whole seam line just shift back and sit perfectly in the right place. Brilliant! So I hope you found that really helpful today as we've looked at how to fit our gorgeous Gemma dress. Don't forget that we do have the fabric video that you can check out, also the sew along and further hack videos on how to hack this pattern and how to alter it to completely transform the way that it looks. Thanks for joining me today. I've been Izzy at Minerva. I'll see you next time.